So let's see. One of my big questions. Oh, Greg. Yeah, Greg just emailed me saying like I missed the link.
Oh no.
Here I come, Greg. All right. Boop. So while I go and fetch Greg, I think one thing I would love to have you expand upon is like your feelings about the fact that when people come to comics, they're there for I want to draw comics, I want to get into the art, and I want to I have so much inspiration and creativity, and then they find out they have to handle the business side too, and there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of maybe they're blindsided by it. Like, oh, I came here for the art. I didn't know I have to be the business person too, and so maybe especially like maybe as an editor, you've had to run into that with some creators who aren't as versed with it. And I was wondering if you wanted to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what's upsetting about the comics industry as a whole is that there isn't a lot of like training for like anything. There's no training on how to communicate with your editor. There's no training on how to work collaboratively. You just kind of have to do it and then learn from doing. But I think one of the best bits of advice is to know that everyone's on that same journey. A lot of us are just kind of figuring it out. And if you have questions to ask, because, there we go. How do you handle when a creator you're with who isn't as experienced? Oh, that's a good question. Okay, I mean, I don't think I have the right answer for this because I am being told not to do this. But I want to make sure that when I'm working with an editor, that they know how to edit comics. Like, it's like such a simple thing to want, So what I do is I kind of vet them ahead of time. And I'm like, I'm not going to take this offer if I don't feel comfortable that you can actually help me put this book together. You have to really think about, well, who do you want to work with and who do you want to make the time to work with? Because if you are working with a creator who's like, there's plenty of times where I've worked with writers who have never written with other creators before. And I get those scripts and it's like, this is too many. This is too many everything. It's not going to fit, So I just have to be not so severe when I say things are wrong. But I have not yet perfected it. So do your best to be nice to the people that you work with and recognize that not everyone has the same skill set as you. And you also want to encourage people to get their skill sets more upgraded by suggesting to them that maybe they read a book or two. I don't know how to do it in a way that is like a normal, nice person way to do it. I have things that I like a very certain way. And if it's not that way, I'm not going to work with you because I'm a freelancer. I'm not employed by anybody. So I don't have to have any struggles if I don't want to. I think that's one of those things that make it a lot easier for me as a freelancer to know when to say no and when to say yes on projects. Because if it's going to be a project that I'm not going to enjoy as I'm working on it, there's no reason for me to do it unless I'm in dire straits and I need the money, So I guess the best answer to that question is practice tact on your own time.
A very useful skill in this community. Another question I had is when it comes to what you owe to like how you've built your career, how much would you owe to being able to draw well versus hustle?
Ooh.
And that could be business side, that could be networking, that could be maintaining relationships.
That's a great question. I actually think a lot of it has to do with, I think for me anyway, it's been about maintaining relationships and being able to like know people who can get other things done. Because what I like to be as a creative and a careers person in the comics industry is I want to be able to put someone in touch with someone that they need. You know, it's like my favorite thing to be like the great connector. Like literally, if you have like a title logo that you need done, I'm gonna find somebody who can do graphic design for you, you know? So, and I think a lot of my success comes from other people's knowledge that I take that very seriously. I take networking very seriously because I don't consider it networking. I consider it community building. You know, I want to make sure that the comics community is healthy, it's strong, and it's a place where you can trust who you are working with. And I think the reason people like to work with me is because I have those connections and I make it my goal to have those connections, you know? I would like to say it all has to do with art, but I don't know. There's a lot of people out there who are not very good and they have comics on the shelves. So I'm just saying a part of it is art and a part of it isn't. Some of it is just about who you know and the kinds of projects you want to work on and really figuring out where you fit in that system. So, yeah. I mean, obviously you should always try and get better at your craft, but I think there's always going to be someone who wants to see your work. So like, for example, when I was working in editorial at Lion Forge, we would have these meetings where we would each bring in a title that we wanted to pitch. So, yeah, you know about this, Megan. We tried to that haunted house comic that you were working on. And so we bring it to the meeting and we talk about all the things that are great about the comic. We talk about the art. We talk about how it ends. And we really are trying to pitch it as if it was our own baby, you know? And there are definitely stuff in there where I'm like, I would have never picked that book. I get like surprised sometimes at the kind of books that get brought into those meetings because it's like, you like that? That's what you're interested in? And yes, there's work for everybody, no matter what kind of work it is, you know? So if you feel like you're not there yet, don't think that because you might already be there for someone who wants to pay you for that work, you know? Also, they're hiring you for the experience of being able to work with you, you know? Like, I used to think that I felt like a fraud because I would do commissions for people. And then like years later, I would go back and look at that commission and be like, oh my God, that's not good at all. And I'll think, should I give them their money back? But yeah, no, you shouldn't. But yeah, that was a moment where I had to realize that someone wanted my art how it was at that moment. And they paid for it for that reason, you know? So I think that probably falls under imposter syndrome, doesn't it? So yeah, never feel like you have to wait for when you're good enough because you may be good enough today, you know? What do I think about the concept of paying your dues and taking jobs that aren't great or relevant to your goals just to build up career cred? That's hard because I know that I had some issues with that mindset when I was working at Lion Forge. There was a time where someone was like saying very rudely to me about how I need to go and get everyone coffee. And I was like, my title is not coffee getter, okay? So you can either ask me nicely or you're not getting any coffee, you know? And it's like, just because that person was, you know, my superior, I don't give a fuck. Like, you shouldn't work with people like that. So when I think paying your dues are due to yourself, not to anyone else. So I took that job because I wanted to get better at marketing. I wanted to get better at social media marketing. I wanted to get better at editorial. So everything I do is because I'm looking forward to how is this going to help me rather than how do I pay you to allow me to go further, you know? So think of it that way. It's all about strengthening your own skill set, even if it is totally relevant. There are some jobs that I took where I was like, I don't know if I should do this. Like, someone reached out to me and asked if I could present for a costume design class. And I'm like, okay, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm going to talk about like the character redesigns that I had done for Heart of the City because I do design their clothing and I do design how they move in that space and why they move in that space. So I'm less so I'm not really thinking about how should I make this project fit into costuming as much as I am excited to see what they think of my work and how it relates to costuming, because then I can learn something too, you know? So even if it doesn't seem like it's relevant, it might be relevant. I don't know. I'm excited to see how relevant this becomes. It could be nothing, but wouldn't it be cool if later on someone was like, what do you think of this costume? Maybe I can bend your ear about it. Who knows?
I became a costume designer because of Steenz.
Like, that's so wild. That's so wild. So yeah, you never know if it's going to be relevant or not. But if you feel like this is important, like I think you'll know. You know, you'll feel it in your heart that maybe this is something I should do. There was a novelist who came to me and they were like, I want help pitching a graphic novel. I've never pitched a graphic novel before. I love reading comics, and I love the idea of comics. And I really want to pitch this novella that I have as a graphic novel. And so I was like, this could be really interesting, because right now I'm working with a novelist who has no idea how to script for a comic, has never really thought about visual literacy like that, other than, you know, reading it for enjoyment. So this is a really good opportunity for me to get my feet wet in the world of editorial for novelists to become graphic novelists, you know? And that's what we need, some of these novelists to be taking some classes and getting some help, because those speech bubbles are looking thick. So yeah, I even though it was something that I wasn't totally sure I had the chops to do, because I had never specifically worked with a novelist, I still was like, I feel like this is important. I feel like I should do it, because who knows what I could do later. Who knows? Maybe, you know, Roxanne Gay is like, actually, I want to work with Steenz now that she's working with another novelist. Who knows? Who knows? So I think you'll know in your heart if it's something that you should try, even if you're not totally sure what the end result is going to be.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, Carolina's got a nice big question.
Okay, what do you think is better, approaching a publisher with a finished comic ready to go, or approaching a publisher with a project that's not yet finished? Not yet finished. Not yet finished. Do not finish that comic and turn it in and be like, buy it. It's not going to happen. The reason why I suggest going the second route is because you're going to have to change it anyway. You know, it's never going to be what you wrote at home is immediately going to be put in on the shelves. You know, it's just not going to happen, whether it's a novel or a graphic novel, especially if it's a graphic novel. Also, if you're drawing a graphic novel, do not do any work that you like for free at all. I feel like you would be doing yourself a disservice if you drew an entire graphic novel and then tried to pitch it like that, because what you want from an editor is you want them to look over your work. You want them to make sure that it is clear from beginning to end. You know, so if that outline is shaky, it's going to show up in the art, you know? So there's no reason for you to finish the art ahead of time if you're not even sure if the full story works, you know? Because if you look at that outline, it's like, actually the ending makes no sense at all, but you've already drawn it, you're going to have to redraw it. You know, should publishers be approached the same way? I mean, do you mean novels or do you mean graphic novels? Because novels is completely different. Novels is something that they want completed. They want to see a full manuscript because it takes less time to draw full graphic novels. Yeah, all graphic novel publishers need to be approached this way. If you have a pitch, do I have the ability to share my screen on this one? Okay, cool. Yeah, let me open up. I wonder if it'll show up. Yeah. Good job, Google. Good job. Okay, so this is a pitch layout. This is everything that needs to go into a pitch. I'm going to explain why, because that's going to make you understand why you have to do any of this. So I always suggest that people actually start with number 4, the arc/the issue breakdown, because that is your entire story. No editor is going to buy a comic that doesn't have an ending, because it's a risk. You know, they're not going to be like, oh, that's a good, idea. Here's $30,000. No, they want to make sure that you actually know what you're doing, you know? So the issue breakdown is where you're going to put out the entire story, that full outline. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be flowery wording. The story just needs to be there, because we need to read it. And then once you finish with your arc breakdown, you can condense to create your synopsis. Your editor, the one that you send the pitch to, they're the person that's going to look at this full breakdown. The editorial team is not going to do that. They're just going to look at the synopsis. Because if you're in a meeting, you've got like 5 editors and they each have 3 books to show. To prepare for that, you're going to read 15 full outlines. No, you're not. You're going to read 15 synopses and call it a day. So I always recommend that you start off with the breakdown and then you condense to the synopsis and then you condense to the concept or the log line. Now the concept and the log line, that is something that summarizes what the story is, and the marketing and the sales team are going to look at that. Because a lot of people come to those editorial meetings. It's not just editors, it's also marketing and sales. So marketing and sales may not look at 15 synopses, but they will look at 15 concepts. They have to think about how are we going to sell this book, So always make sure you have your issue breakdown and then the synopsis and then the concept. So these other things that you need in here are also helpful because you need to be able to know what the intended audience or your demographic is, because everything about that colors how your editor is going to edit your book. Because if you give them a book and you're saying it's middle grade and it's just like full of curse words, we're going to have to make a change, or if you write it and it very much looks like a picture book and you're like, it's YA. And I'm like, no, it isn't. This is 3 pages long. That's not going to be enough to fit into a book. So it's super helpful for you to know ahead of time what you believe the audience and the demographic is going to be. So we all have an idea of how we're going to be editing this book. It's very specific too, especially when you start working with like Scholastic. They have it organized really by like age as well. So depending on what the age is, sometimes they'll say, well, we can't use this word in particular because it's just a hair over their reading comprehension, So it can get very detailed. So it's good for you to know that sort of thing. Character designs, it's helpful. You want to be able to see what the characters look like. Now, the sample script, even though there is no official script template, you still need to have a script so that the editor knows that you can take an idea and turn it into something tangible. Because there's a lot of times where you have a great idea, it's like really coming to you in your head, it's beautiful, but then the second you go down to write the script, you're like, I have no idea. I have no idea how to make this happen. So you do need to be able to write a script. The sample art, it really depends on who you're pitching to when it comes to how many pages of sample art you need. But I like to do a happy medium of 6 to 8 because it shows enough of your skill, and also you're not like breaking your back doing pages for free. Because remember, this pitch is not going to pay you any money unless you're working with a team and they hire you on and they're like, we'll pay you for the sample, and then you are in our group when we pitch the book and you get in on the deal, then you do make money from that. But for the most part, if you're doing your own creator-owned series, the money comes from nowhere. You just have to kind of put in the work. But this also needs to look as close as possible to the final art, because if it's not finished, how are they going to know what it looks like? Like, do you want this to be full color or do you want this to be spot color? You got to show us what it looks like for both so we can make a decision. And the reason they need to know this ahead of time is because once an editor gets a pitch, and if they finish the pitch meeting and all the other editors are like, hell yeah, we need to buy this book, the next thing you need to do as an editor is do a profit and loss statement. They need to be able to see how much it's going to cost for them to buy this book and how much they anticipate to receive with the profit of this book. Obviously, we're in entertainment. There's no complete real way to know what a book is going to do until it's out, but you can make some educated guesstimates based on history and what we've seen of sales of similar books. So this is why it's helpful for you to know as much ahead of time what you visualize this final product to be, because a full colored book is going to cost the company more than a spot colored book. you know? And then the last thing is your letter of intent, your bio. You want them to know that this is the reason why I should be doing this pitch, this book. This is something that's relatively new. Some people do it because they want to show that, oh, well, this person has X amount of followers on Twitter, and this person has like awards from left and right, which is like, okay, that's helpful for marketing. But editorially, you want to make sure that the person that's writing the book is knowledgeable about what they're writing about. This comes into play a lot when it comes to identity pieces. So like if you are writing about what it's like to be a Black girl that lives in Detroit, if you're not Black, I'm not buying that book, you know, because why would you want to hear from anyone else about what it was like? You know, I know that's like controversial because a lot of writers feel like they should be allowed to write whatever they want. And you absolutely are allowed to write whatever you want, but will it sell? You know, is someone going to pick that up? Is someone even going to want to read it? You have to think about that because yes, we all want to create our magnum opus and feel so good about this work and it's our baby, but it is also supposed to make you money. So you have to be realistic about that sort of thing. So that was a very long answer to your questions about pitching to publishers, but that is my answer. And then we've got, what would you say to someone who says, oh, this book is meant for everyone, any artist, I don't want to discriminate. Dang. If someone says that, you need to go back to them and say, okay, but who is the book for? Because you got to know, you need to know like what the age range is. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to say, like, there's some times when like, okay, so there's a book that I'm hopefully going to be pitching soon. I'm going to say the demographic, I would like Black alternative girls who like, rock music. That's the demographic that I want, because not only is it going to help them figure out how to edit it, it's going to help them figure out how to sell it. Like, if that's the case, we need to make sure we do a book tour that takes place in those cities that you feel like are underrepresented in like the underground scene. Or we need to make sure that teachers see that in their students and know to pick that book up for that student. So it's helpful for a lot of different reasons to know where you see your book when it's finished. But you don't have to know. That's what's wonderful about an editor, though, is when you pitch a book and your editor feels like, ooh, this is something that I could possibly sell, they're going to have a very long conversation with you, multiple conversations before they ever take it to the rest of the editorial team, because they want to be very clear about what the book is, how they want to sell the book, because once that book goes to the editor and the editor has to take over, you want to make sure that they are representing your book in the best way possible. So that's why it's nice to have these kinds of conversations with your editorial team before it gets pitched. Any tips for successful self-publishing, not necessary full-on solo? Yeah, honestly, I think Gumroad has been incredible. Lots of people have been using Gumroad to self-publish their comics, and Gumroad has a pretty good split when it comes to how much money you get from the sales of the comic that you're putting out. So that's a really good opportunity. If you go to conventions, making sure that your setup isn't super overwhelming. I've seen a lot of people that their booths are just, there's books everywhere, and it makes you a little like nervous about, well, where do I even begin? And we got to be real. We've all been to a Comic-Con. Sometimes you want to look at someone's table and not have a fucking conversation with them. So you should be able to have a table set up that allows them to browse on their own, and then if they would like to ask you a question, they will. So getting practice doing those sorts of things are also very helpful. Getting a job that pays is super helpful. Like if you can get a nice cushy job where you're just doing like data entry at this boring like pharmaceutical company, they'll probably pay you a shit ton of money to like phase out for 8 hours, and then you can go to work after your work, and that's when you can start making the stuff that you really care about, because you don't have to worry about like, oh, I don't know if I'm spending my time right, I need that time to make money. You already make money, you make money from 8 to 5, so work on your passion in the evening. It's like sad that that's the situation that we're in, but it's also reality. So I just want to make sure you guys understand reality as well. How do you balance all the different modes you have to be in and all the different work you do? I rely on my calendar like nobody else. I'm going to share Oh my God, I didn't realize my screen was still on. Please don't share what it's I'm doing a comic where I get into subcultures that are not my own and then writing about my experience. So this is when I got into coin collecting for the past 3 months. So that's what that is. Okay, so this is what my calendar looks like. I know it's a lot to look at, but it doesn't overwhelm me. It makes me feel calm because all the stuff on the calendar is not in my head anymore. I could not tell you what I have to do tomorrow. It doesn't matter because it's on the calendar. You know, at the end of work today, I'm going to open my calendar. I'm going to write down my to-do list on my sheet of paper. And this evening is when I'm going to know what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm not thinking about it on the weekend, you know? So what I like to do is I have a couple things that help me with that organization. That first thing is I make a schedule every single day of all the things that I have to do. Right now we're here. I'm doing my talk at 3:30 p.m. CST. I color code by what type of work it is, whether it is something like this where I'm speaking, or if it's something that I could smoke a joint to, like just drawing. And like if I have to do editorial, I'm not gonna be high. That's crazy. So yeah, I definitely want to know like when am I working and when am I just phasing out and drawing Heart of the City because it's already done, you know. I also make sure to put down everything I add on to the day. So today I got an email saying that maybe the title for a book that I'm editing can't be that title because of copyright. So I need you to start thinking some alternative books. So you know what I'm going to put on my list of to-do? I'm going to put alternate titles for the comic. And then when I do it, I'm going to cross it off. Because even though it wasn't on my list at the beginning of the day, doesn't mean I can't add it to my list during the day. And then it makes me feel really good when at the end of the day, I can look at all the things I accomplished, you know? Also, if I get a project, so let's say Magna's like, Steenz, I need you to do a 3-page comic, full color, lettered, and I need it in 4 weeks. And I'll be like, okay, got it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to organize by time when I'm going to work on something. Oh, actually, I have something here that you can see. I don't need to use an explanation. So I have to redo the cover for Heart of the City for the collection for stupid reasons, but it happens. So I put in here exactly when I'm going to work on pencils, when I'm going to work on inks, and when I'm going to finish it off. That way, I don't just have the 14th as a looming date. You know, it's more so I've already planned out when I'm going to do each section of this project. So I'm not really worried about when it's due. I don't really know when it's due. Today I found out it's due on the 14th, apparently, because the second I get that job or that project, it goes directly into the calendar. And then I like to organize it by what's editorial, what's Heart of the City, what's illustration, you know, all my different projects. That way, if I'm on a call and someone was like, when are you free? I can always just take off all the work and see when am I actually going to be at home and when am I going to be out of the house, you know? I also organize it where I don't take on projects like this if I am working on a side quest, which is this yellow bar. So that's really easy for me to say like, oh, you want me to do something? I can only do these weeks, these days. So I already know what is available. So that's how I balance it. Is I utilize my Google Calendar to the best of its ability. How often do most comic publishers do open submissions? I'm not sure if I'm terrible at researching, but I feel like submission pages are always stuck in a limbo of, yeah, one day we'll open them maybe. That's true. They do always seem to look like that, don't they? So the open submission for like Oni, that was like a big thing. They like made a huge deal out of that. I think they ended up getting like 800 submissions, which makes my submission getting through even more impressive, to be honest. So I think what's really important is not looking at when submissions are open, but finding out who the editors are, and also finding out if you just want an agent to do this kind of work for you. So if you are working with an agent, the agent's going to know who to send that pitch to. So don't worry about submissions. And if you are, don't use the word networking, community building, because you don't want to use people to get places. You want to help each other get places. And so if you don't have an agent, I would recommend finding out who those editors are. Yeah, making friends. Find out who those editors are. Find out what their specific submission process is. Because just because Vault Studios may say we're not accepting submissions right now, that may not always be the case. Like my website is not updated. I don't have the right pronouns on my own website. So imagine if it's like that for a comic company. No one is actually updating that website as often as they need to do. So I actually feel like even though a lot of people get annoyed by emails, I'm not that person. I think it is better for you to reach out to that specific person and be like, what are the submission process? Do you want me to send it to you? Do you want me to send it to your assistant? Like, make sure you know exactly where that thing needs to go. You know, that conversation is helpful. It's also helpful because an editor can very much say like, I'm actually not accepting for the next 2 months, but if you send it to me now, I'll be able to give you like a preliminary idea and then come back in 2 months and we can talk again. So who knows what could happen just by reaching out to that editor and being like, what's the sitch? They could give you more than the sitch. Where am I making these friends and comics these days? Well, before it was, conventions, who I'm tabling next to, who I'm tabling with, going out to dinner. But now, so it's honestly stuff like this. There's a lot of programming that's available right now that is all virtual because of the pandemic. And honestly, I feel like I am learning more about comic creators through these than I have in a lot of years at conventions, because our attention isn't shifted. You know, you go to a convention and it's like loud, there's funnel cake, there's corn dogs, and there's people yelling about, bags and boards. It's a lot. But when you're doing something like this, like if I see, I know who you are, Shell. Okay, so maybe not Shell. If I see, Samuel Castillo on Twitter and I'm like, wow, that art's really good, I'm more likely to follow them because I met them at a visual or at a virtual conference like this. So if you have the opportunity to do virtual conferences, whether they are like the stuff that that your school is doing, or even stuff that sometimes online news outlets will put together workshops. I know Bianca Eunice does like a ton of virtual workshops as well. Just go to those and make sure you speak up and talk. Do the things that you're doing now, because people who are in that are going to recognize, and people are going to know who each other is. I think another way is Discord right now. Find a Discord server that works for you. How do you find Discord servers? You kind of have to know people. So find the people and then find out where those Discord servers are, because, I run my own Discord server too, so I have a server that's specifically for creators of color, of marginalized gender. So like very specific. But those are the people that I was looking for. And then you can start inviting people, and those people will invite people, and then all of a sudden you have a community of people who are working towards the same thing. Always have one head in front of you and one hand behind, to pull someone else with you.
That's such a lovely way of putting it too. That idea of like, as much as maybe you're looking for that lift up, you have to be prepared to like return that favor.
Absolutely. It's just something that I really like to do. Like I said, I like being that connector. So if someone is like, I'm having trouble with, spot coloring, I wish there was someone who could show me that. I would be like, you know what? That's a really good question. I know someone who's really, really good at spot coloring, and I've been trying to get them to do a workshop for years. So maybe I can get them to do a workshop, and then we can all go and learn something about it. That's the kind of stuff that I would do. And I don't see any reason why any of you couldn't do the same things. When anyone asks me like, oh, who are your influences? Who are you like excited about? My peers, the people that we're all working in this together. And I am like always, shocked and surprised at how much amazing stuff comes out of these people's hands. Dude, Megan, you draw so much. Like, I know I draw a lot considering I have a daily comic, but I feel like you draw twice as much as I do.
You do it. The syndicated comic is a whole other level above. Do not sell yourself short.
Thank you. But, that sort of thing, like, that's how you make those, communities. I reached out to Megan for work, And then now Megan is reaching out to me for work, So just that.
Absolutely. And I know when you started talking about how like you first started building your career after you graduated and doing those drink and draws and building those relationships, and you mentioned the idea of like, oh, because comics is so small. And I assure you, Toronto comics is even smaller. You talked about how you got lucky because so-and-so knew so-and-so. And I've definitely I feel like everybody has that experience where just like somehow 2 degrees of removal, and you get lucky. And the way I try to look at it is it's less about who I know and it's who knows me and who knows my work and how I do my work and how I conduct myself. And I feel like that's so important with networking as well, as like the impression that you are making.
You also want to think about, oh my God, the idea just flew out of my head. What was I talking about? What did you say before? You were talking about...
The idea of like who you know, but it's more about who knows you.
I know what I was going to say. Speak what you want to do into existence. And I don't mean like speak it into existence like literal magic. I mean, you never know who is listening, okay? So like there was a point where I was like, man, I really want to do this Encyclopedia Brown comic. I really want to do it. And I could never find the time to make it myself while I was working. And so when I got let go, I was like, okay, now I have no excuse. I totally have time now. And so I was making it and, putting it out on Twitter and letting people know. And then Doc Shaner, who was like one of my favorite artists, was like, I love Encyclopedia Brown. And so does my kid. And can you send me one? And I was like, yes, that's so cool. So I don't know if that means that Doc Shaner is going to look to me for anything ever, but the fact that we had that communication and that contact does matter because you never know what it could lead to. There have been times where someone could say, my dream job is to be able to work for X, Y, and Z. People are going to keep that in mind and they're going to remember. And then when that opportunity comes up, they're going to be like, oh yeah, you said you were interested in this, right? Are you still interested? Because I have somebody who might want it. And it's very likely that someone is going to suggest your name with a project that they feel they're good with if they know you personally. Like if I only knew Megan from their work and we had never chatted, we had never had any like interaction outside of work, I don't think I would recommend them for as much stuff as I do, because when you recommend somebody, you're saying that you give them the seal of approval. It reflects on you as well. So if I send Megan out to a job and they don't answer emails and then they say, F this work, I can't trust my ass no more, So definitely think about who you're making those friendships with, because they can be some of your best champions as well. And yes, we have had the idea of networking totally drilled into our heads. And it's just like, it's exhausting. I just want to make comics. I want to like talk to people about comics. Can I not do that? But if you put pressure on all these conversations that you have, I don't think you're really being yourself. There was someone who told me that like, I treat people like we've already been friends for many years. And it's like, yeah, because I want to do that, like I want people to feel comfortable around me. So if I'm going to be like chummy with you, even though we just met 2 minutes ago, it's because I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel like you don't have to like be perfect to have a conversation with somebody. And that's kind of the idea that we get drilled into our heads in school, is that how you say it, how you hold yourself, how you hand a business card, that shit does not matter. Like focus on you first. Focus on your own work first, because once that is good, it's going to show. It's going to shine even,
Absolutely. And I feel like the word networking has such a weight to it that someone not familiar has this very specific image of like, here's my business card and here's my portfolio at the bar where you were hanging out. And now I've made an impression.
That's like, you make the worst impression if you give somebody a portfolio at a bar. You have to think about it. Are they actually going to look at it? Or are they going to spill their tequila sunrise on it? If it's me, I'm going to accidentally spill my tequila sunrise on it.
Accidentally.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you have to think about like what is the reason that I would look at something. People reach out to me all the time and they're just like, I have this project to like take your characters and make them into stuffed animals. And I'm like, what characters? Which ones? I mean, you reached out to me. Tell me, which ones are you thinking of? Is it Heart of the City that I don't own, which everyone knows I don't own? Is that it? So, yeah, you can't just do the same thing for every single person. Every experience has to be kind of like a personalized one. I mean, I don't even go to people with ideas unless I know it is someone who actually is interested in it, you know? So, and I think that's another question a lot of people have is, especially as writers, is how do you find artists to work with you on projects? It's really about friendships. So you have to feel comfortable with somebody, at least for me anyway. If you email me and I don't know who you are and you want me to work with you on a project, it's very likely I'm going to say no, because I'm one of those people that can find my own projects and I am busy already. So no. But if you're like just getting out, you want to find an artist, I always say make those connections with people first. Find out what they're interested in. Talk to them as a person. If me and Shell are talking about seaweed for some reason, and Shell's like, thinking about seaweed, I'd love to do a comic about how seaweed affects the ecosystems of some coral reef. I'd be like, that's so interesting. And then I forget about it for a little bit. And then like a month later, someone's like, we need artists for coral reef stuff. We need writers for coral reef stuff. I'd be like, ooh, actually, Shell will be great at it. I don't know if they'll really, really be great at it, but they're really passionate about it. So you should at least talk to them about it.
You won't find anyone more passionate.
Yeah, not a one. So yeah, you have to think about what is it that people are going to be interested in. If you talk to me about doing like a thing with like talking animals, I hate drawing animals. Never have you ever seen me draw an animal that wasn't my own cat, So think about who you're working with and who they actually are as people. That's probably the nicest thing you could do for somebody, is know who they are and what they don't want to do.
With the idea of like how you present yourself and being very specific to like what actually you are interested in. We have a couple students here who are going to be graduating this year. And one thing we sometimes find at our industry nights is that we have writers or editors come in and ask the graduates, oh, what do you want to work on? What are the kind of things you want to do? And we've had an issue where a lot of the graduates say, anything. I just want to work. I'll work on anything. And then I get the feedback of saying like, that wasn't helpful.
Yeah, no shit. You can't go to a restaurant and be like, feed me, and then not tell them what you want to eat. So yeah, that's hysterical. Whenever I ask people what it is that you want to do, I don't ask them what kind of job do you want to have. I ask them what kind of stuff they want to make, because if you want to make something, it'll get made whether you get paid to do it or not. So if someone was like, I'm a portfolio reviewer, what do you want to do with the rest of your career? I think the best answer would be to create the stories that matter to me. Obviously you want a job, but that's not what they're asking you, because they're not going to hand you a job. They want to know about you. They want to know what sort of things are you personally interested in. If they were asking you that because they wanted to give you a job, that would be an interview. And that's not what these are. At least not what I'm assuming these are. I did like a ton of portfolio reviews for people, and people were always like, how do I get a job doing this? I'm like, I'm not interviewing you. I have no job to give you. I can't tell you that. What I can tell you is the best way to go about creating the things you want to create. If you want to do a black and white comic of a retelling of The Godfather, but with sponges from the ocean, the first thing I would do is be like, oh, so have you done like scuba diving and stuff? Have you done like research on like which sponges you think are going to be each character? And then I ask them, which sponges is Vito Corleone? Which sponges is this character? Just talking to them about their thought process and the kind of things that they want can turn into who knows what. And then later on down the road, someone's like, I need coral reef comics. And I'm going to be like, well, Shell's passionate about comics, especially in the coral reef. And this other person wants to do a Godfather one. So take it as you will. So, yeah, talk about the sort of things that are interesting to you, because I know you have interests. Everyone has interests outside of school, and they don't talk about them. That's what I want to hear. You know, I know what you're doing in school. You're like shading spheres. I don't care about that. No one cares about that besides your drawing teacher. So shade your spheres in the class, but everything else, do it on your own time and make it happen. You have to be your own hype man too, because the idea that you are not succeeding at something because of outside forces, that's not something you can control, you know, but you can control what you do, you know? So if you're the only thing that's holding you back from doing something, like, you can beat yourself up to do stuff, you know? You can tell yourself, you know what, I'm going to take 2 hours out of my day to work on this comic idea. And if you end up working 15 minutes on it and you're just like, this is so hard, then guess what? You worked 15 minutes on it. You know, that's more than if you had just sat and thought about it. So, you know, you kind of have to just get up and do the work. And whatever happens, happens. Which is, what a crazy thing to tell somebody. Whatever happens, happens. It's more than whatever happens, happens. But also, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, I love that, like, every IP and idea you describe sounds like some weird Mad Libs of like coral reef or sponge with Godfather.
Yeah, don't forget mustache toast. Maybe we can do like,
I'll never forget mustache toast.
Yeah, you have the copyright of it now, so it's
official. With that idea of like with our grads, and especially like preparing themselves for building their career, I would say I would love to know your opinion on that first year out. Like, you've just graduated, you want to build a career in freelancing comics. What are the best things they can do in that first year?
Get a job, any job at all. It does not have to be an art job. If it's an art job, sick. But if it's not, it doesn't matter. You need to be making money. We live in a society. And you need to have a roof over your head. You're not going to be able to create the things you want to create if you don't have internet. You're not going to be able to create the things you want to create if you're hungry because you can only eat at the dollar store, which was me. You know? So I would say, be less hard on yourself, because the idea that people make it right out of college is not only a myth, but it only happens to a small percentage of people. There is only one Tilly Walden, okay? Well, she like 17 when she started. I was on a panel with her and she was like, yeah, I can't go to BarCon. I'm only 19. And I was just like, what have I been doing all my life? But that does not happen regularly, you know? So I say the best thing that you can do for yourself is get comfortable working and like having money in your pocket. And a lot of things that come from that, you end up bleeding over into your creative work, you know? So like when I was working at the library, even though I was not making what I should have been making at the library, I still had a roof over my head. I still ate dinner for the most part, but I found that working with people and working on the zine program and getting the memoirs up, like all of that comics related stuff, I still was able to do. And it influenced everything else that I did creatively as well. So first step, have a bed and a house or a roof over your head. Then the second thing would be to create the stuff you want to create the second you think of it, you know? Even if it is like finishing it. So for example, that Encyclopedia Brown comic that I wanted to do, I kept thinking about that for years before I actually did it. But what I could have done instead was slowly work on it, you know, pick out a story from the book and see which one do I want to adapt. Draw some, you know, character designs. All those little things are going to add up and make it a lot easier when you do finally have that time, because you've already prepared it, you know? So, yeah, don't wait until you think you're ready, because, you know, you could be ready yesterday and you would not have known. I never think that I'm ready enough. I mean, even when I was literally auditioning for Heart of the City, they were like, your roughs are like too detailed. You don't need to be working this hard on your art. We already know you can draw. We really want to make sure that you can get a punchline delivered in four panels. You know, you only have so much space with a strip. So being able to find that joke cadence, but also that arc of a storyline across strips, that's what they're looking at. And in my head, I was like, are you sure that I can draw though? Like, are you sure? And yes, I was able to do it. And when the actual, comic strips, as you saw, are like, wait, did I show you guys that? Okay. Well, anyway, so yeah, don't just wait until you think you're ready, because if you just ask yourself, you'll never feel ready, So I always recommend, I don't know why we're so hard on ourselves. Like, oh yeah, we live in a society. Yeah, every single day. Yeah, and it's like, people tend to forget that each of us are on our own personal journeys, and you will get to yours in due time. It's there. I always see those like inspirational quotes like, Oprah didn't have her first talk show till she was 40 years old. And I'm like, I wonder what it was like before she was 40, because I'm pretty sure it was exhausting and shitty. Like, that's great that she finally made it, but we do also have to remember that getting to that point can suck. It can be really shitty. And I think that's also good advice, to know that things are not going to always be easy. There's going to be times where you have to decide, okay, well, do I want to spend time working on this comic that's not making me any money, or do I want to pick up this extra shift, even though I've already worked 6 days out of the week, but I have only noodles in my closet, so I guess I'm going to have to work that extra shift, So sometimes that's just, unfortunately, the reality of it. But if you keep in your head that we're all going through that same reality, more of us are going through that reality than you think. I would say that the majority of comic creators are going through that reality today. Like I think we said it earlier, you have to be Renée Sagemeyer. You have to constantly have royalties coming in on books. Like it's not something that is sustainable. It just isn't. So you have to really think creatively,
No, absolutely. We are coming up near the end of this. So if anybody else has any questions for Steenz before they leave today, now would be the time to pop them into the chat. But this has been so wonderful and so lovely, and you've provided so much more than I even expected. I'm so thrilled that we were able to have you here.
Great. Yeah, honestly, anytime. I do so many things. I talk about like my process. I can talk about my process with my strips, with my graphic novels. I have a character costume design PowerPoint now too. So you want to see how that goes.
Repurpose that.
Yeah. We'll see. I still have some time to look at it, but I'm not stressing about it. Okay.
We're going to be having you talk about networking would be really great, or talking about just like the whole process of the graphic novel, I think would be wonderful. But Sid has a question.
Ooh, what's it like having to create every day like that? It's grueling. But it's a good thing though. I mean, look, when I was originally talking to Sheena, my editor, about it, that is what she told me. She said it's a grueling process because there's no end. You have to retire or quit, because so originally syndicated comic strip contracts were 10-year contracts. I know.
they go until they die usually.
Yeah, pretty much. And so they just recently changed it where like it's a 3-year contract that you can renew over time, But yeah, I mean, I knew it was going to be a daily thing, but now I know that it is a daily thing. Mm-hmm. But I'm really, really particular with how I do my comics compared to other cartoonists. A lot of cartoonists, so basically you have a certain time before you have to turn in your work so that it can be sent to the syndicate so that they can put it out in the papers. So you want to make sure that it's done by that time. That time is like 2 weeks at the very like latest. Like, so for me, I was like, I'm not going to get caught in this problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write 3 months worth of comics ahead of time, because I will make the time to write all of those storylines, organize each of those pieces into each day, go to those days and organize it by panel. I will take that time to do that. It usually takes me about like 2 weeks to do 3 months worth of comic ideas. They don't have to be perfect. They have to be, enough that my editor can understand what's happening. And so I'll do 3 months of that. And that is helpful because I wake up in the morning and it's already decided what I'm drawing. I am like 6 weeks ahead for my dailies and like 4 weeks ahead for my Sundays. I do sometimes will do like twice as much so that I can have like a week off, So like I had a vacation, so I did 2 weeks worth of dailies, which wasn't that bad because the storyline at the time was a lot of talking heads and not a whole lot of like backgrounds and kids jumping over things and stuff, So it can be exhausting, but if you do it right, it's not. Like anytime I think of an idea for Heart of the City, I'll just put it on my Google Doc. That's different heart ideas. And they don't have to be fleshed out at all. I think one of them was Dean gets a haircut. I do not go into detail about the story for that until it's time for me to write the stories. And then I'm like, oh, okay, look here, I have an option. I can write about Dean getting a haircut. So then sit in my chair and I'll think, okay, what can I do about this haircut that's funny? Maybe he doesn't want to get the haircut. Why doesn't he want to get the haircut? Oh, because he doesn't like talking to his barber. Why doesn't he like talking to his barber? And then you find out that he's just like, he's so stressed about telling his barber that he doesn't want to talk. And then when he finally tells his barber that he doesn't want to talk, the barber's like, that's fine. I have a podcast that I've got like 20 minutes left on about like NASA. And then Dean's like, wait, NASA? Tell me about this. And so it's like a cute story where he would not have ever talked to his barber about the stuff he wanted to talk about if he hadn't asked him not to talk to him. So that's how I think of the story. And then after that's all written down, it's about as much as what I just said. Like that wasn't very pretty. It wasn't like well spoken. And so I just kind of dump it onto the page and then I start breaking it out. Okay, how do I make the scene where he doesn't know how to talk to his barber? How do I make that? And I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if he turns around to talk to him and he's just frozen? He has no idea what to say at all. And so that's the fun part, is like, how do I make this scene funny? How do I make this scene funny? And then the stuff that's not funny, I have to be like, well, how do I make it poignant? How do I make it so that they can read a strip, stand alone, and be happy with what they read, So it's a lot to think about. But if you organize your schedule enough, you can figure out what's the best way to do it where you're not overwhelmed. Except today, I was actually doing a class where I was talking about how I write 3 months ahead of time. And sometimes I'll put a note in those 3 months, and one of them will be like, Sunday, 11:14, write this, Steenz. And so like, past Steenz just didn't write a Sunday. And my editor doesn't mind because she's like, you'll figure it out. And I'm like, okay. And so here I am today, and I look at 11:14 in front of this entire class, and I'm like, oh God, I have to write a Sunday. I have no idea what I'm going to write it about. So if anyone has any ideas, I still haven't done it yet. It takes place in November. So yeah,
it's about a mustache with toes.
I could possibly do something with mustache toes. Let me actually write that down just so that I don't forget that I could just use mustaches. Well, let me get permission from you since you have the copyright ownership.
Okay, yeah. Everyone here is witness. We've transferred it back.
Oh my God. So yeah, do I spend time working on getting better at getting ideas? No. Most of my ideas come in the shower. I'll like talk about maybe a possibility to my husband, because that's like our time to talk to each other about our days without being distracted by anything. Is in the shower. So I'll just be like, so I have this idea about using this quote. How can I get this quote in the series? And he will have no ideas. But then him throwing out things that don't even match make me feel like, well, I guess I could do that for something else. So yeah, I think the one thing that makes it better at getting ideas is knowing that anything can be an inspiration, anything at all. There's a time where I was writing my 3 months, and I had like 4 days that I could not figure out what can I fit into 4 days. It can't be a super long arc, so it has to be a short 4 day arc. And I'm sitting here, and not only am I sitting in bed, I'm also sick with a cold because this is late. And I mean, it's late for me. And so I was like, of course, Heart gets a cold. And so that's what I used for those 4 days is Heart is talking to her mom about how she's getting a cold. And her mom is slowly putting on like a hazmat suit and like gloves as she's talking about her symptoms. And then she's like, look, I can't get sick. I'm the breadwinner of this family. I gotta make sure that you get food. And then she's like talking to her friends about how her mom is so dramatic. And her friend Kat is like, well, she's the breadwinner for the family. So all of those ideas just came from sitting in bed, being sick, being like, what can I write about? Oh yeah, I'll just write about being sick then.
I think that's also like a very perfect example of like, don't wait until you think you're ready.
Mhm.
Like, you have everything you need at this point to just make it.
Yeah, you really, really do. I mean, anytime people say like, oh, I don't even know where to begin, I suggest they start by making short comics. The zines that you can like fold into a zine, and it's like,
I know what you're reminding, but do the people in this room know about folded zines?
So you can fold a zine with one sheet of paper. All you need is a sheet of paper and a drawing utensil. You don't even need scissors, because if you're good at like making nice, clean like cuts when you like fold paper, you can probably do it without scissors. But scissors, paper, pen, a one pager, please. It is technically, I think I can just draw it out for you guys. But you take a sheet of paper, you fold it in half, hot dog style. Do people still call it that? Hot dog style, hamburger style? Well, if not, you learned a new thing. You can call it hot dog style when you fold it vertically. Fold it vertically, open it back up, fold it hamburger style, which is in half, okay? That's great. Open it back up. See, you already got some lines in it. You're gonna take this side and fold it into the middle, okay? Fold, fold, fold. And then you're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Fold it into the middle so it looks kind of like a pair of French doors at a villa or something. Man, that sounds nice right now, doesn't it? So now you've got all these squares, right? So this line right in the middle there, you're gonna cut that. You're gonna cut that. I have a nice pair of scissors that I don't let anyone else use, because you know how it is when you find somebody who likes to torture scissors by cutting into like glue or fabric or something. Not having it, not with my scissors, not today. So, all right, I cut out my little hole there. You're gonna hold it like this. You're gonna push it in. And you're gonna turn it like that. So that it looks like this. I believe it's called a mountain fold. If you're into origami. This is like the ugliest zine I've ever folded. Then you flatten down, okay? And then you close it up. Boom. Now you have a zine with a cover, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages, and a back cover. And so what I like to do is I like to write down on there what the cover is. So this is my front cover, FC for front cover. This is my back cover, BC for back cover. And then I sit and write down all the numbers on each page. Obviously, they're not going to be huge, but you write them on the page so that when you get to it, you know exactly which way the comic should be facing. So you're going to have back cover, front cover, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or maybe it's this way, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, and so now you have a zine, and you can draw your little comic in there. And then once the comic is finished, you open it back up, take it to a Xerox, that's your local library, make 50 copies, which I'm pretty sure a page is 5 cents. So I don't know how much that will be for you guys. I don't do math. So then you can just refold them all. And now you have 50 copies of a single comic. And that's it.
I hope you were all following along at home.
So yeah, I've done all kinds of zines. My favorite zine was definitely rating the first 8 episodes of Columbo, rating them on a very specific rubric of enjoyment, character development, a good catch, and overall. So yeah. Any other questions?
On brand. How so on brand.
I know. It was very particular. I actually have watched every episode except for the last one, because if I watch the last one, I will have no more to watch. I'll have to start from the beginning, and I'm not ready yet. But one day I'll be ready. One day. Yeah, Columbo Revival Team. I actually played Vampire Columbo in my Vampire the Masquerade TTRPG. I got to every single time we played, I did a bit about trying to find my wallet or my gun and reaching in all of my pockets. So yeah, that was fun.
So good.
And then I drew Vampire Columbo and saying, well, I can only really meet you at night. So yeah, if something makes you laugh and it's your own thing, also make a comic about that. Because even if someone else doesn't find it funny, you'll find it funny. And then you'll open it up 10 years later when you're moving out of your house and be like, this is inspired. So yeah, I think that's a good way to end the class on.
Yeah, on that note, with Vampire and Masquerade Columbo, thank you, Steenz, for joining us today.
You're so welcome. Very, very happy to be here.
All right, if everyone could type a thank you into the chat for me, for our wonderful guest. Thank you again for giving us your time and your expertise. Is so appreciated.
Yes, of course. And then also, I'm one of those people that I answer all of my emails. So if you send me an email and you have a question about literally anything we talked about, or if you have questions for anything, honestly, you can always email me. So I'm going to put my email in the chat.
Yeah, where can they find you online as well?
So if you take the first half of my email and pop that into Google, you'll find me everywhere. So I have Twitter, Instagram, it's all Steenz with 1 H. And yeah, you can talk to me about your zine, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it may take me a minute to answer it, but a minute for me is like 48 hours. So if you got a question, anytime, I'm available for anybody.
Oh, thank you so much, Steenz. All right. I think that's going to conclude for today. I hope we'll see everyone next month for our next creator talk. But for now...
Oh, yeah. Can I get invited to that?
100%. I will send you a link.
Sick.
All right. Beautiful. All right. Bye, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.